Welcome to The Quantum State, a podcast exploring the latest research and innovation in quantum computing. Join us as we dive into groundbreaking breakthroughs, trends, and news shaping the quantum landscape. Welcome back to The Quantum State. Today we have Dr. Sushmita Ruj, Faculty of Engineering Lead at University of North South Wales Institute for Cybersecurity. So you and I were recently on a panel at Quantum Australia, and so we had the pleasure to discuss a lot of these things already. But first, for everyone here, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into the blockchain space.
It's a pleasure, Anastasia, to be here, and thanks for inviting me. And we did have a great panel last time, so it's really great to be here again. So I am with the School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of New South Wales, where I'm an academic, and as well as I lead the engineering faculty when it comes to the Institute for Cybersecurity, UNSW Institute for Cybersecurity, IFCyber. So I'm primarily trained computer scientist. I've been doing cryptography since my PhD, almost, now more than 10 years. I've been doing cybersecurity, mostly from the cryptographic side of things, and I work in various domains. And I have been doing blockchains since I think 2014. And at that time, it was just Bitcoins and not as much of the blockchain that we see as of now. And it started pretty well. I stuck to it. I still do blockchain research. I'm very interested in what's happening around. At the same time, I'm very much interested in the post-quantum cryptography stuff, which I started a few years back. But in general, all these excite me a lot, and I'm really looking forward to talk to you this podcast.
Yeah, and this is actually very timely because we're at all-time highs for Bitcoin right now as we're filming this episode, a little later when it comes out. But it's very timely. There's a lot of really interesting new things in the press about the post-quantum cybersecurity signal iMessage. So very excited to dive in more with you.
Great.
Could you tell us, in your opinion, and this is a question that obviously we've asked many other people before, what is the threat of quantum computing to current cryptography? But building upon that, what is it about this new generation of post-quantum cryptography that makes us believe or have confidence that a similar kind of attack isn't going to turn up in the future?
Okay, so if you want to, go back and see how cryptography is designed, cryptographic algorithms are designed, and why they're secure, you have to, go back and look back and see that many of these cryptographic algorithms are based upon certain hard assumptions. And the problem with quantum computing, the threat that quantum computing brings here is that many of these assumptions would not hold anymore. So that essentially breaks the crypto systems. And it's not for all cryptographic algorithms, only a class of cryptographic algorithms, mostly the public key algorithms. So what happens is that some of the algorithms are, quite affected by these quantum computers because the underlying security assumptions are broken. And that is why we see a lot of discussion and, a lot of effort going into moving to post-quantum cryptography. So to say in a few words, is that, we have these assumptions being broken by quantum computers, and that's why it is a big challenge at this point of time to, design algorithms that are quantum safe, and not just design algorithms, but also see how it fits with applications that use cryptographic algorithms, and how these protocols have to be tailored for these applications, so that these can be integrated seamlessly as well as have comparable performance.
So when you say the underlying assumptions get broken, here you're referring to things like the assumption that integer factorization can't be done
Yes,
efficiently, or
yes,
Greek
the discrete logarithm.
logarithm.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So lattice algorithms have been there for a very long time. And, there's no formal proof that it's not going to be broken, but it's a belief that actually these lattice algorithms would be safer. But yeah, there's no formal proof at this point of time. But since, we have been looking into lattices for some time, we means the community, and it has been there for a few decades now. We are interested to explore more into lattice-based algorithms. At the same time, you talked about hash-based algorithms. Now, hash-based, when it comes to hash functions and the security of these hash functions, when you think of the quantum threat, there's actually a subtle thing that we have to understand, that the hash functions or symmetric key cryptographic primitives, for those algorithms, you need to be able to do, the attacker typically does a search. And the main question is that, can we search quickly? And with quantum, the only challenge is that with the symmetric key algorithms, if you improve the key sizes, by actually 2, then what happens is that you have to extend the length of the keys to be able to make them secure. So with existing algorithms, hash algorithms or symmetric key algorithms in place, you don't have to worry about changing the algorithm. But yeah, you do have to worry about, the key lengths. And that is why, the hash-based signatures are becoming so popular, and symmetric key primitive-based, post-quantum algorithms are becoming so popular, because you can still retain the algorithm but change the parameters. But with the public key algorithms, you have to change the algorithms altogether. So that's what it is.
Right. So based on what you're saying, is it fair to summarize that by saying that our belief in the security of, for example, lattice-based crypto is the test of time, and that's it?
What I would say that there is this, since it's not fully proven to be secure, so there's still, you have to give a benefit of doubt, I would say. And that is why, if you look into the standardization process, after the first, finalists, some of the finalists were announced, there's still call for more algorithms which are non-lattice based algorithms. So that is the reason why we are looking into alternate solutions, and we believe that that's the way forward. We would not have just lattices or just symmetric key based or just isogeny based algorithms, but we would have a range of algorithms so that we have some backups if something does not work.
So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the blockchain side, right? Like I mentioned at the beginning, we talked about these messaging apps being upgraded, which is really great, because I posted on Twitter recently, like, hey, would you use a quantum resistant app if you had one? And everyone was like, yes. And they didn't realize Signal was already out there, right? So it's really good. Enterprises are moving forward on that. And the upgrades are fairly simple in some way, right? Like, obviously we have to get the right cryptography algorithm. But blockchains are very different. So can you talk a little bit about where the cryptography is integrated into blockchains and why they're different and perhaps harder to upgrade?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because if you think of blockchains, there are different types of cryptographic algorithms that are used in blockchains. So one of them is hash functions. And this is typically, hash functions are typically used to ensure the immutability property in blockchains, which means that if I change the hash of a block, then you have to change all the corresponding, all the subsequent blocks, which is rather difficult because the blockchain data or the blockchain is maintained by so many peers in the system. So, changing the hash is one thing. or, hash functions is one thing, but the other very important, cryptographic primitive that is used is, signatures. And this is used for authenticating that, yes, I mean, I'm the one who is making the transaction, or I'm the one who is, proposing the block. So signatures are very useful in blockchains, and those signatures are mostly ECDSA or other algorithms which are prone to quantum attacks, and that's the fear. So there are many other cryptographic algorithms that are used for privacy and other reasons in the design itself, which are again a problematic scenario. But overall, I feel that signatures specifically is very important part of the component of a blockchain that will make it serious, create a serious problem for blockchain with when the quantum computers arrive.
How does it work when you want to migrate a blockchain to post-quantum cryptography? We've got basically all the existing ones. Some of them have sort of upgradability built into them, like Ethereum did this. It was difficult, it was a big challenge, but they pulled it off.
Yep.
Some not so easy to migrate. Like, what's the best way to approach this?
Yeah, so why is it not easy to migrate? Maybe I'll talk about that. So what happens is that when you have these, even before migration, if you think of the blockchain code is essentially in all the peer nodes who are, hosting the blockchain or validating the transactions. And this code has to be changed if you have to update a signature, for example. And what happens is that if you, try to do this, what it means is that, your software, you have to upgrade your software. And this is not a very easy process, given that, there would be many, peers in the network, and there has to be, so that's one part of it. The other part of it is that you have to create a hard fork in the network, which is rather, I would say not impossible, because we have seen the case in Ethereum, as you mentioned, Peter. But it needs a consensus, or some agreement within the community, and then seamless migration, between the two versions of Ethereum. So that's actually a big challenge. So first of all, you need to convince the community that, we will be going for this. And then once you have this thing, there needs to be a lot of testing, a lot of, validation to be done before this is deployed. Because, blockchains have, amongst other things, the most important thing is that they have lots and lots of to do with money. And we have to be extra careful when we, discuss blockchains. So that's actually a big issue when you think of migration. The other issue is that what's going to be the speed of the blockchain if you adopt these algorithms? Would it be comparable? Would it make them slower? So these are all questions to ask when you are trying to migrate to post-quantum blockchain, and it needs to be discussion at various levels. But yeah, very importantly, the technical level, but also whether that is acceptable to the community who are part of that the ecosystem.
So there's, like you mentioned with Ethereum is now putting out a quantum resistant roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
IOTA tried back early in the day. They were probably one of the first, I'm not going to claim that, to say, we're using quantum resistant algorithms, but then they got hacked and they kind of went back on that. So what do you feel like is happening right now in the community, right? So Ethereum's finally moving forward. Like you mentioned, right, there needs to be consensus. So I personally am a little bit worried about Bitcoin generally, just because that consensus in the community is much harder to get. But what's really happening in the blockchain community? Are people just waiting for other chains to make the first move? Or what are they waiting for? And what are they waiting for? Faster speeds? What are they waiting for to actually transition to PQC?
Yeah. So it's happening at many levels. And one of the levels is that designing primitives that are needed for blockchain protocols. So for example, verifiable random functions. So these form a very important component of certain consensus algorithms, for example, in Algorand. Now, if you think of this verifiable random function, you have to have a post-quantum version of it as well, just in the consensus process itself. So we did some work with lattice-based verifiable random functions so that, this could be at some point of time. So these sort of efforts would be able to be plugged in when we think of migrating towards the post-quantum blockchains. So one of the things that the community is doing is developing primitives that are, currently used in blockchains, but don't have that post-quantum variant. That's one thing. But the other thing is that even if you have a post-quantum variant, the questions are performance-wise, as I mentioned, this could be a performance bottleneck sometimes, but it would also be, computation-wise or maybe the size-wise. These things could be quite expensive to maintain, and that might degrade the overall performance of the blockchain and also affect the scalability of blockchain. So that's a thing that is a big concern. So when we are trying to design all these primitives or post-quantum primitives, we have to be mindful of the performance as well, security as well as performance. The other thing that's something that I've been seeing in the community, which is really very nice to see, and I love it very much, is that of zero knowledge proofs. Because as you mentioned, scalability is something very important, and we are seeing a lot of work, a lot of things going around in layer 2 blockchains, which are, many of these are based upon zero knowledge proofs, for example. And in that case as well, we see a lot coming up with post-quantum zero knowledge proofs. And, Starkware is a very classic example, but there are, many other efforts that are being done at the moment. And as you mentioned, with blockchain, privacy becomes very critical. So naturally, zero knowledge proofs, not just scalability, but also from the privacy perspectives, this become very important. So on one hand, you are designing these protocols, but also checking that these are compatible with what we have at the moment, or even if it's not compatible, how to make that, ensure the compatibility and ensure that we have performance, at least comparable performance. So the performance might not be higher than what we have right now with just plugging in the algorithms, but again, is it comparable? Or if it is not, how much? What have I got to do with it? So essentially, there's work in several levels. It's at the level of the protocol design, at the level of implementation. A lot has to be thought of when it comes to implementation. And it's because, the size blow up, for example, in signatures. So you would need, the communication overhead goes up, or, the network traffic increases. So there's a lot to really think about when we are migrating towards the post-quantum, blockchains.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you raise about interoperability, because people often forget that the blockchain isn't a blockchain. It's a whole ecosystem of interacting blockchains with all sorts of advanced interactions and smart contracts and interledger transactions. And it's not necessarily the case that if the blockchain where you're operating on is post-quantum secure, that's not necessarily the end of the story. If that blockchain is interacting with and dependent upon other blockchains, or as you mentioned, a random oracle that may not have migrated. So how robust can you actually be if we're not just talking about a simple blockchain that just stores money like Bitcoin, but something advanced that integrates with other oracles and ecosystems and smart contracts? What do you do there?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question, honestly. I mean, if you think of the internet itself, it's like a very, I would say, a philosophical question as well. Like, if you were thinking of the internet, and when you're thinking of the migrating in the internet itself, like, there's so many bits and pieces to be putting together and tried and tested, and then, so many applications that are affected. So it's like, this post-quantum migration is really going to be an extremely tedious process. It's going to be an extremely, what would I say? It's going to be a process which would involve not just the technical people. It has to go over and beyond technological advancements. It has to bring in the community as a whole. When I talk of the community, it's like, the technology, the people, the business people, the policymakers, and that's very important. So, for example, I have a blockchain, and I want to interact with some other, say, external entities. Say, for example, I'm in, and I have to get the data feed. So what sort of techniques are going to happen, and what sort of support I'm getting to enable this transition? And whether, so for example, if I have nothing to, nothing sort of enforces or forces me to transition to post-quantum, I might want to maintain my status quo and just do my business as usual. And maybe I'll lose a few customers. It really might not matter to me. But, if you think of the system as a whole, maybe, it has to, we have to have the conversation from the policy people to figure out, what sort of regulations should we put forward so that, post-quantum, the transition is kind of, is made mandatory. And under what circumstances should it be mandatory? And what should we do? How should we enforce this transition is also something that is currently being discussed throughout the world. And there are, I believe, and I might be wrong here, UK and, also in the US, there are some legislation that are actually trying to enforce that, organizations should have a migration strategy and start making it as an important agenda in their business. So it's actually a problem that needs, support from all sides, and has to, there's a lot of conversation has to be around this problem. And of course, as a technical person, I mean, I might not be as, what would I say? Like, I might not have that say in the policy planning, but yeah, I mean, we have to kind of make the community understand what's the risk and vulnerability, and how do we, make this transition.
Earlier on, Anastasia mentioned that Apple iMessage is making a transition to post-quantum cryptography. Signal recently did the same thing. I think OpenSSH, the tunneling protocol, they did the same. And what all of them are doing, all of those ones that I mentioned, they're not just substituting, they're initially going to double encryption. So you've got the previous generation encryption with the new generation on top of it, precisely for the reason that the new generation isn't tested, so you don't want to have blind faith in it. But that means you've got a very long-term migration path potentially, and especially in that migration period where you're double encrypting, you've got an even bigger issue with like memory and speed overheads and signature sizes. So it's conceivably something that's going to be not a very straightforward migration path. They start with the old generation cryptography and use both, and then at some point in the future go to just using the one once we're confident in it.
Right. Yes, so hybrid cryptography, I mean, this so that's going to be there for some time till we are very sure which algorithm would stand the test of time and what to use in the future. And I believe that's actually a very good, way of going forward, because, if we have just, have some a set of, algorithms, post-quantum algorithms, and we have tried to plug them in it- yeah, that might after a while, and we have seen this mm, with some of the algorithms, especially I think it was it psych. So yeah, I mean, one of the algorithms which was actually broken, one of the which was broken very quickly, essentially showed us that you know, we have to take it slowly, even though it means that we will be losing on the performance for a while. But you know, we have to understand that the security would be paramount, because you know, if you look at, you know, the modes by which these attacks happen, and then, you know, you could actually do a harvest now, decrypt later kind of an attack, then, you know, those sort of things are really very scary. So it's definitely going to be a bit performance-wise, it might be not as effective, and there could be other challenges as well. Like you might have to have, you know, you have to break packets up, and then that might cause errors. So you have to do the retransmission and all those. Those are real big challenges that we will be facing. But at the same time, you know, we have to do it for if we have to make things secure. Yeah. So it's also a big trade-off.
When you're saying they're like resending packets, there you're referring to things at like the TCP/IP stack level, where the whole protocol needs to be updated accordingly to accommodate for errors in the new form of encryption, the changes in latencies, and whatever those respective overheads might be.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of work going as well, like, you know, even with the hybrid encryption, like how do you actually upgrade and how do you incorporate these, say for example, signatures into the internet protocols to be able to migrate to the post-quantum version. So it's not going to be a very plug and play kind of an approach, but it has to be much more deep-rooted technical challenges. A lot of things have to be considered at the network level, at the systems level, and also this would involve very interesting, you know, research questions, at least for us researchers. It's very lovely time to be in this space.
Yeah, there was a blog post this morning that just came out on the Cloudflare blog that said about 2% of TLS connections right now are PQC encrypted already, which honestly to me sounded, that was more than I thought it would be. I thought we were
still 2%?
2%, which I honestly thought was a little high at this point, but that's great to see it moving forward, right? So it's great to see people thinking on that level of security. And so, ironically, Cloudflare was down this morning right when that blog post came out, so that was also not great timing. You know, all the jokes about quantum computers attacking them right now definitely happened.
On this issue, the people who are making these early transitions at this point, they're doing so preempting the NIST standardization process. They're making this migration before it's actually been standardized what the protocols are. Is that because we can be already very confident that the current candidates are going to be the standardized one? Or is there the risk that the people making the earlier migration could get it wrong and say, damn, now I have to make another migration all over again to the proper standardized version?
So as far as my understanding goes, many of these algorithms, I mean, so for example, crystals, fiber, or maybe dilithium, these are actually, you know, certified by NIST now. So definitely most of the transition is happening with the standardized ones. Like, yeah, I mean, that's many things that's left, you know, in the standardization process at the moment. But to get started somewhere, I think that's a very good idea to actually take these round 4 you know, standardized ones at the moment and try to incorporate them in the protocols. But as and when we see newer algorithms, we might essentially see them being integrated and tested as well. So yeah, I mean, and somewhere you have to start, and this is what's happening, and these are like big players who are actually doing this thing, so that if there is something wrong, they can go and fall back and build it up from there. So it's I think it's a well calculated risk that these organizations are taking, and I'm very much in favor of that, taking well calculated risk, because ultimately we have to move. So it's better start now than wait. Yeah.
So particularly for the financial industry, right? When we're talking about money, things are getting even more intense. Harvest now, decrypt later. I don't have too many national secrets that the world, will collapse if my texts are taken over. But there's a lot of those things out there. And obviously, money is a big one, especially talking about Bitcoin and, potential factors that they have, different technology that they need to think about to do that transition. What do you think? So I think the first question here is, there's been a few blockchains that are quantum resistant from the beginning, QRL, there's a few more. Is there a benefit right now? Because as we're talking about this, right, we're looking at these algorithms and we're saying, well, maybe they're not going to be secure forever. Is that actually a benefit to build a quantum native right now? Or does it really not matter whether you are kind of on an old cryptographic system because you feel like those new algorithms will be dead at some point anyway?
That's a very good question, and I'm not sure what might be the right approach, and the companies would be taking different approaches depending upon how much risk appetite they have, and how much they can spend on this transition. So for example, if there are fallback options, and they would essentially take that risk and start this migration and start the process. But I think a lot of these companies are waiting to see which primitives and protocols are going to be standardized, and then start this migration. And I think it's a well thought of plan. Unless and until, but yeah, I mean, we have to start, so that at least a mindset should be there, and try to incorporate algorithms at the moment, which are more towards post-quantum, which are post-quantum variants, is a good idea. But yeah, I mean, waiting to see the outcome of the standardization. And as we speak, there's a lot happening in the ZK standardization process as well. So, it's in the standardization, and also, other standardizations that we have to be looking at to make a judgment what might be the one for that particular blockchain. So I think yeah, it's going to be a very interesting thing to see, like how the blockchain ecosystem is evolving, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in the next couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious to see. I think yesterday or maybe the day before, BRICS announced that they were going to be building a digital currency, right? So I wonder if they're going to build it quantum native from scratch, right? The first kind of, I don't know if it's the first, actually. I don't know if you know about this. The first inter-country currency, something like that. I'm very curious about what the project plan is.
Is this for like an international finance backbone for the BRICS countries at the government level?
Like it. I saw a tweet, yeah. Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi, or South Africa.
South Africa, yeah.
Yeah, Saudi, UAE, I think joined recently. 3 more countries joined recently. So they're looking at a currency to build, which is really interesting considering what's going on in the US right now, right? You have all these senators, especially right now, all-time highs, all these senators going, no, Bitcoin's dumb, don't use it, we're going to make it illegal. And, the other side of the world is going, nope, we're just going to build our own.
It's interesting how those dynamics work as well, because there were two interesting cases in particular. Firstly, just as the war between Ukraine and Russia was starting, Ukraine, I believe, legalized cryptocurrencies as an official payment mechanism. And I think that was an interesting consideration, providing effectively a fallback mechanism for trade in the eventuality that there's a monetary crisis from conflict. And there was another interesting one, not related to legalization, but in Venezuela, I think it was, there was a strong correlation between daily Bitcoin volume and the monetary problems in the country at the time. So it seems very sensible that governments would be thinking formally about what's the best way to accommodate this as a potential way of hedging against risks.
Yeah, and even on the other side of, I heard, so that when the Taliban took over, women couldn't get bank accounts anymore, and so crypto spiked because that's all the women had to use in that country at that point. So it's been very interesting to see how this is such a backbone of our financial system now.
That would be an interesting outcome if, as a consequence, all of the women ended up way richer than all the men.
Because they're going for the crypto because there's no other choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I go back to something that I think you briefly mentioned earlier on? One of the candidates for NIST ended up being broken, and not by a quantum computer, but by someone's laptop.
Yes.
And from what I understand, that wasn't an attack on the algorithm itself. It was a side channel attack based on a timing attack. And people often think that, understanding the security of these algorithms is just about looking at the source code and evaluating that and the logic and the algorithm behind it. But there are all the implementation issues. Can you tell us a bit about what you see as the potential other vulnerabilities, side channel attacks, etc., in these new generation protocols?
Yep. So side channel attacks have been a very known type of an attack in the crypto world. And as you mentioned, timing attacks, power analysis, a code bit attack. So these are all, have been there for a long time. And I believe that with all these post-quantum algorithms and the candidates, because, we have so many NIST candidates which are being analyzed now, it's not just, the theoretical attack or, attack by software. Hardware analysis is one very important, or I would say side channel analysis is a very important part of the attack, of launching attacks. So there are researchers who are actually looking into these algorithms, and mostly, attacks that we are seeing for all these algorithms are not with quantum computers. It's with the normal, our laptops and, or maybe, the taking more intensive computation, but it's still without quantum. So the challenge over here is that the good thing about all these NIST competitions is that you have all these algorithms which are open, and everyone can view these algorithms, and naturally the community is trying all possible ways to find bugs in this, or not bugs, I would say, attack these things. And if you look into the NIST candidates, it's not just the algorithm, the implementations code is also provided, which makes it all the more easy for researchers to check whether that code has any sort of vulnerabilities. And of course, whether this code is, whether there are different types of attacks, whether this algorithm is correct. So, these attacks and I would say cryptanalysis is happening at different levels, and I think that's a very good thing that we are, everyone is trying to figure out that we choose or help choose the best candidate.
So when
yeah.
NIST does these processes, evaluation of side channel attacks in a rigorous way, that's a part of the process.
Yes. So the way this goes with this competitions is that since all these algorithms are open and there are a lot of people looking into these algorithms, the researchers themselves, they would look into algorithm and try to check whether these are secure, and they would be analyzing these algorithms, and they possibly would set up their findings as well. And maybe in a paper or maybe as a ISER report or any other technical reports. And these are all considered by NIST when they are evaluating the algorithms. Because, I mean, when the community, the worldwide community is looking at it and they are finding, attacks. So it's like, I would say it's a very collective effort that is being put in here. And NIST essentially considers all these attacks as well as the comments that are being put up in to finally decide the candidate. So if there is an attack, it's we have seen a lot of algorithms, not just in this standardization process, but before, that these have come from community, from the research community who have already been able to attack, and then they have publish the results or put the results up, and these have helped NIST to make a call when it came to for standardization. So yeah, I mean, it's actually, I would say, a very, very collective effort that is being put up to select the rest.
Given that that's the case, the one that got cracked on a laptop, how did that slip through for so long?
Yeah, that was going to be my question, of a little bit of the snarky question maybe, but like, how do we know that the right people are having their eyes on these algorithms? Because one of the things I think that's really special about BTQ is you have the quantum scientists and the cryptographers working together, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, that's so what happened with Psych, if I understand that the assumption that they had initially, there was I think it was not well analyzed, which actually was a bit of a challenge. But then, I mean, that is where, this whole process is very transparent. So, if it was maybe done by one or two people, maybe, even this attack would not have been possible. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people looking at different things, and someone figures it out. Now, we might see, and this is very normal in the cryptography community, that after many years you find something is not working properly. So there has been instances. So we cannot just rule out that something looks okay at the moment, might not be as might not stand that test of time. But that's why we are a little bit hesitant when we are saying that we will be just going directly to the PQC algorithms. We are waiting and seeing that. Yeah, and nothing is like perfect secrecy, perfect security is a myth. Yeah.
All of these things, they probably make some people lose a lot of sleep.
That's actually true. I mean, and especially there's a lot of people who actually lose the sleep because they know that there's, that some people might lose the sleep because they are scared that they might lose their money because the blockchain might break. But there are some people who are losing their sleep because they are really trying very hard to help and move to this, to make the world a better place. And yeah, I mean, we will definitely have people on both sides of the spectrum.
Is there a way to get better collaboration or education between experts in the field? I mean, obviously for us, one of the reasons for this podcast, right, is because not a lot of quantum physicists have knowledge of the blockchain space or the cryptography space, but we have to work together. So how do we get more people getting their eyes on this?
Yep, that's a very good question. And I would say, there was a time when I would see quantum physicists as adversaries. That was a kind of a feeling. No, Harsh, no hard feelings for, quantum physicists watching this podcast. But yeah, I mean, that was a thing. I thought that if the quantum computers come, we are at risk and so on. But, later what I have realized that this conversation has to be, go hand in hand. The reason is that, as you correctly mentioned, Peter, that most of these attacks are even, are normal attacks that are not even quantum attacks. And when we define the security, we are actually defining a classical notion of security for many of these algorithms. And there is a need to understand what the quantum security would be like. And it's very important at that point of time to understand what the quantum side of things will be like. And that's where we need that conversation with the quantum scientists to figure out, when we say like it's secure and it's quantum secure, it's not just a classical security, but it has to be like, quantum security. What sort of challenges will quantum bring? If we have a quantum random oracle, how does it look like? What is it? What can it do? So it's very important that we have a very good understanding of the quantum side of things. And there's a lot of effort that is being put up now, because most of the security that we are seeing is like, classical notion of security in the post-quantum algorithms. But yeah, I mean, we are getting there where we are trying to define the security, and naturally we are trying to figure out how to mitigate the attacks with the classical notion, with the quantum notion of notion as well.
I think when it comes to finding quantum attacks, it's actually extremely difficult to provide generic answers to these things. Like finding Shor's algorithm, well, that was good luck. That was very fortuitous. And if we hadn't have found that, there wouldn't be any other attacks against RSA. Similarly, if there is a quantum attack against lattice-based crypto or hash-based crypto, it's something that we'll either discover or we won't. But it's not that it fits in a category of some sort of class of quantum attacks, because they tend to be very uniquely tailored to the particular system that they're attacking. So I think maybe the way in which quantum computing interacts with breaking things like this is very different to
very different
classical attacks, where we have a big list of standard cryptanalytic techniques that we use.
Yeah, that's very true. So for example, when we say that the signature is secure, we say that, we give so many instances or so many signatures, and then, then the attacker cannot generate or forge a signature. That's his unforgeability that we are trying to do. But it happens in the quantum computer, because, with the quantum computers, the state might be changed after the experiment itself. So we don't know how to, I don't know. There would be people who are actually studying this to realize, like, what does it mean to have a quantum secure in the first place? So yeah, I mean, that's very, very interesting discussion that is happening at the moment, and that needs more discussion. So definitely it's a very, I mean, I no longer see them as adversaries, but I see that we are friends, and we have to, we have to do quantum, we have to enrich the quantum community, because this quantum has so many lovely applications, but at the same time, we need to have that interaction or discussion to figure out how to build the post-quantum crypto algorithms and how to make them secure.
From the corporate side, though, that's, you work with a lot of corporate clients, right? They want very straightforward answers. So this is not very satisfying for them to hear. I was on a call with a bank, and they said, well, how do you know this won't be broken, right? And I said, well, elliptic curve now is broken, and, no one's ever coming into there saying that, hey, we have this perfect algorithm that will stand up forevermore, right? I mean, that's the hope. But what are the actual practical steps that companies can do to transition towards PQC? We talked about hybrid, we talked about getting involved in these processes, but what can someone actually do today to start moving towards the PQC future?
Yeah, so there's actually some guidelines that companies are being provided now to migrate. And one of the first things is that, discovery and, labeling what sort of crypto components they have, either crypto software or maybe data, and cataloging them, trying to figure out what the potential threat would be like, and then figure out first discovery, data discovery, and then you would have try to see what sort of algorithms have been there and what would be the risk of these algorithms, and also depending upon the risk appetite of the company, they might essentially choose what to migrate at what point of time. So there's actually a list of steps: discovery, and then figuring out the risk, and then have an assessment based upon these, like what would be the migrating strategy, whether I would be migrating, which applications should I be migrating first, what sort of data should I be targeting at, depending upon how critical the data is for that organization. And then some of the well-known techniques that are already tested, these have to be put in place by the organizations to be able to move forward. So yeah, I mean, perfect security or secrecy is a myth, and we are not even trying to do that. But where we know that we have an imminent danger, we start acting now.
Maybe the label post-quantum secure needs to be elaborated upon, with believed to be post-quantum secure. People often assume that cryptography is proven to be secure one way or another, and it's almost never the case.
No.
One final outlook question. Apart from quantum technology, what do you see as the big impact technologies upcoming in the field of security? They're going to have a big impact on the field.
So I think, there's a lot of chat around this large language models and, AI. And there's a very strong collaboration, or I would say strong connection between security and all these, this AI and other ML techniques. One of the questions is that whether these these large language models or the other AI tools, how easy or quickly are threats being discovered is one big question that needs to be, that's being currently explored. At the same time, the other question is that what is happening to this AI or, the LLM kind of, algorithms? How do I know that they are actually spitting out the right results? How do we know that they are generating the parameters that they are supposed to? So there's a lot of questions that are, that needs to be answered at that point of time, because we don't understand how these algorithms work in general. It's very a gray area, so there's more to be done at, saying that, this is how, what I'm getting, what these algorithms are spitting out, and this is the right thing that they are supposed to come with. And there's a question of trust, like what data are they trained from, whether this data is trustworthy data. Is my algorithm doing the thing that it should be doing? Again, having the sense of verifiability of these computations. These are very, closely related discussions, and I am seeing at least some conversation happening in the academic community based upon this. But I think there's more that these questions will be very important, especially when it comes to security and privacy of data. How does it, how does privacy affected, data confidentiality affected when it comes with these, AI and machine learning techniques? So I think there's a lot. We are going to see a lot of discussions coming at the intersection of AI and cyber at this in this case, and I'm really looking forward to see a lot happening in the next year or so.
With Claude 3 being released this past week, I saw a quantum researcher actually ask the Claude system to create a new algorithm with the idea he had, and it correctly did the action steps that he did for his unpublished paper that he was going to publish fairly soon with that. So
Oh, wow.
I'm sitting here wondering if tonight I'm going to be in Claude. I just upgraded and being like, let's talk about how we can hack one of the NIST PQC candidates. Like, let's talk through with the LLM. So I think definitely.
And I'd love to see if you can get some results out of it. It would be really nice to see that.
I'll try. I'm no expert on the cryptography side, but I think it would be really interesting to see what it comes up with and whether, I don't know, people are claiming, oh, it's so creative, whether it actually has some new insights. And because, you know, the quantum field hasn't truly embraced LLMs as much as I think other communities, I agree. It's going to be a really interesting time for that. So maybe it will be the Claude's algorithm and the ChatGPT algorithms coming out pretty soon. So
Wow.
thank you so much for coming on right now. We talked a lot about PQC, not enough about blockchain. So definitely would love to bring you back and talk more about the blockchain side
Sure.
of it in the future as well. But right now, where can people stay updated with news and developments about what you're doing and your work?
Pardon, I did not get your question.
Oh, sorry. Where can we find you online? Do you have a website, Twitter,
okay.
LinkedIn, where people can connect with you to see what you're working on?
Okay, so connect with me on LinkedIn and just type in with my name, Sushmita Ruj, and find me on my UNSW website, www.unsw.edu.au. Okay, so I've forgotten that,
If you
but
Google your name, you'll find it. I know
yeah. Yeah, that's maybe the best way to find me out. But yeah, you can look me up on my university website. I think that pretty much works.
Perfect. And if you're watching this on YouTube, those links will be in the description below, so much easier for you. So thank you, Peter, for co-hosting with me, Sushmita, for coming on to this podcast. I learned so much. And for everyone for listening to these episodes, always remember that you can comment if you're on YouTube, and you can find these episodes on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. And thank you so much.
Thank
you so much, Anastasia, Peter. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you.